Hello Year 5! We are going to start our reading skills lesson slightly differently today. The London Museum have created a Minecraft world of the Great Fire of London. So I thought I would share it with you just to refresh our knowledge. See if you can pick up any things in there that you already know. There's certain characters in there, famous people of the time of 1666. I hope you enjoyed that and you noticed some of the things and made links with some of the events we talked about in our history lesson last week. So the text we're going to look at today, Year 5, is What If It Happened Today? And it's all about understanding the actual scale of this fire in 1666 and scaling it up to sort of think about how the amount of devastation it caused. So I'm going to read the text to you and explain some of the vocabulary as we go, and then we've got some questions. In terms of overall destruction, the Great Fire of 1666 was perhaps the most catastrophic event in the history of the City of London. Catastrophic means awful, devastating, horrific event. The city had been destroyed before at the hands of invading rebels. Rebels are people that don't follow rules. So when it says in the hands of invading rebels, it just means that some people that didn't like following rules tried to destroy the city, but was very small at the time. So it wasn't very big destruction. In 1666, the only two cities in the entire world larger than London were Constantinople and Paris. The Great Fire cut a path of destruction which was bigger than anything seen before or since. To have a better understanding of what it must have been like to see such a huge amount of the city destroyed, it would be useful to scale up the damage and see how large an equivalent size fire would be in London today. First, we'll have a look at the original fire and see how terrible it was. The map on the next page will give you a good idea of how much damage was caused while the fire burned from the 2nd to the 5th of September 1666. We're going to look at that map tomorrow, just to let you know. At the time of the Great Fire, London had city walls, which you can see on the map, which you'll look at tomorrow. So city walls means there was a section of London, the very centre part, which had walls around it, physical walls, and that was to protect them from enemies and things like that, and war. But the city walls just went around the main part of the city. They enclosed, that means they had inside them, a hugely crowded city centre. So that means lots of people, full of wooden houses. So inside these walls were just wooden houses, tight winding streets, so tight meaning very narrow, and busy marketplaces. There had been a long drought in the months before the fire. So a drought means that there'd been no rainfall, so it's very dry. So all the wood so close together was incredibly dry. Slums are places people live that aren't like houses we would imagine today. So if you didn't have anywhere to stay and you sort of built your own little makeshift house, almost like a den, lots of people did that, and those areas were called slums. So slums and other housing areas had sprung up outside the city walls when the area inside them became too crowded. So inside the city walls became so crowded that actually people just started building their own little makeshift houses around the outsides of the walls. These extended parts of the city were also crowded, claustrophobic and dry. Claustrophobic means you don't feel like you've got any air to breathe. So if you imagine really tightly closed, packed streets, lots and lots and lots of people, not much fresh air, so that would make you feel quite claustrophobic, like being in almost like a small box. When the fire began, it had a lot of fuel to burn. The fuel was the wood. It spread very quickly because of the way the city had been built. A very strong wind only caused it to burn hotter and travel faster. Archaeologists, who are people that study artifacts from the past, so things that they find and they dig up, they analyse and they study and they try and find out more information. So archaeologists have looked at pottery fragments found near the house of Thomas Fariner. Now, you saw Thomas Fariner's bakery on the Minecraft video, didn't you? Which is where the fire started, the King's Bakery for Charles II, and worked out that the fire may have burned as hot as 1,700 degrees Celsius. To help you understand how hot that is, wood will catch fire between 190 and 260 degrees Celsius. Rocks can melt at anywhere between 600 and 1,200 degrees Celsius, and even steel, that's metal, one of the strongest metals, steel, melts at around 1,500 degrees Celsius. No wonder the fire spread so fast. So archaeologists think that it burnt as hot as 1,700 degrees, which is hotter than what steel burns at. So how big was London in 1666? How big is London today? What would it look like if a fire destroyed a similar proportion of our modern capital city? Well, we're going to find out all of those answers in tomorrow's text, but today we're just going to stop there. These are your questions. So there's a little bit of retrieval today, and there's some vocabulary questions in this. So which two cities were larger than London at the time? What does scale up mean? How long did the fire burn for? List 3 reasons given for why the Great Fire spread so quickly. What does the use of the word claustrophobic tell you about the slums and the other housing areas outside the city walls? And then I want you to complete the table. 1 has been done for you. So it tells you a temperature between, so it's 190 degrees Celsius to 260 degrees Celsius. The material, wood, melts. So I want you to see if you can tell me some other facts to put in that table, some other temperatures, what material it affects and how it affects them. Okay? In fact, that should be wood burns, not melts. Let me see if I can edit that for you. I know what's happened. That should be wood burns. Copied and pasted the wrong bit across. So at 190 degrees to 260 degrees Celsius, wood burns. So I've given you a bit of a clue there, haven't I? Because some other things melt. So see if you can tell me the temperature, the material, and how it's affected by the heat to fill in that table. Pause the screen there. If you would like the questions and the text, you can find them in the on Teams in the teacher support page in files. Let's go through the answers. So, which two cities were larger than London at the time? Constantinople and Paris. What does scale up mean? To make something larger in size or amount according to a fixed ratio. So if you said just to get bigger, that's okay too. How long did the fire burn for? 4 days, from the 2nd to the 5th of September 1666. List 3 reasons given for why the Great Fire spread so quickly. It was crowded, the houses were close together, there was a drought, so it had dried the wood of the houses, and the strong wind helped propel the fire. That means move the fire quickly. And what does the word claustrophobic tell you about the slums and the other housing areas outside the city walls? They felt very close and trapping. The streets were very narrow and everywhere was very tight and crowded. And then to complete the table, you needed to tell me that between 600 and 1,200 degrees Celsius, rock melts, and at 1,500 degrees Celsius, steel melts. Well done if you got those right, and I'll look forward to exploring this text a little bit more with you tomorrow. Bye, Year 5.